Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I have with me Sri Rajiv Malhotra, a gentleman who has traversed his life from physics and computer science into arts, education, history, research, you name it. Of course, he heads it all in terms of his books that he writes. I think the last of them was 13, and I'm sure he has more in the pipeline to come. A prolific writer at that, a speaker, and of course, today we have with him in Hyderabad. But more importantly, what we seek from Mr. Malhotra is to understand the dynamics of various issues that the world is up against. And of course, with his Princeton-based Infinity Foundation, he has done commendable work in terms of the research, in terms of sponsoring students, in terms of even actually helping write papers on various issues concerning India and the world. Welcome to the show, Mr. Rajiv.
Thank you very much for having me.
I won't really get into the earlier books of yours, but I would really ask you what prompted a physicist to get into writing as such. I thought you had a quarter of a century of work and then you really got into writing as full time. Was it an afterthought or was it a planned move?
Well, you know, I was in the computer field, in the IT field.
Yes, sir.
And first in the corporate world did very well. Then I became a management consultant advising CEOs on new ventures, British Telecom, AT&T, all these companies. And then I left and became my own entrepreneur, started my own companies. I had 20 of them in different countries. And so I did well, and I decided in my early 40s to shut down that and do something better, bigger, more fulfilling for myself, giving back to society and also learning more about my culture, my history, spiritual evolution, things that, you know, money won't buy. And after having enough, you don't want more than enough, you want to do different things. So I had a life change.
You basically have looked at India in different contexts, okay, be through your books or through your talks and various other issues, research papers for that matter. But when you look at India as a country as such, of course, we say we are the Vishwa Gurus in the making and all that kind of stuff. But I think we have a long way to catch up. But I'm going to do a deep dive not into your earlier books, just one of your books on artificial intelligence.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you what prompted you to write a book like that, which is drastically different from what you've done. Of course, it's closer to your field of work and study, but it prompted you to write something different. And I'm sure that that world is now catching up with ChatGPT and other things that are coming up. How do you look at artificial intelligence?
So that was my field as a computer scientist way back in my early 20s, when I was in my early 20s. And I never left that as an intellectual interest, even when I moved on to other topics, but I kept track of the industry. So the reason I started writing now on that field is that I feel artificial intelligence is changing the world. It's another industrial revolution, like the previous industrial revolution changed the world. It has a lot of good things, it has a lot of bad things, it has all kinds of things happening. And I felt that people in India haven't understood the implications. And people in India are just importing AI and learning what the Westerners are telling us to do with AI. But we haven't understood that AI has bias, there is prejudice in the algorithms, depending on who trains them, who controls them. We don't have our own it used to be GPT-2, GPT-3 and so on. Now it is ChatGPT. We don't have our own AI platforms. We don't have our own language model. We don't have our own search engines. We don't even have our own operating systems. So we are always dependent on other people's platforms, including social media, AI, all of that, metaverse, everything. And this is very bad because we'll become a kind of an AI colony. AI is going to create new haves and have-nots. And there'll be not only haves and have-nots among countries, but even within a country, there'll be new upper class who have the control of these technologies, and a new lower class. It will not be the old caste system, but what I call the digital caste system worldwide. And so unless Indians are very sharp about it and new policies are made and we become vigilant, we are destined to become a colony based on AI. And that's my concern, and I decided to write on it. And the book you're referring to is Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power, 5 Battlegrounds. So it's not a book on technical aspects of AI. I'm not teaching anybody to write programs. I'm talking about social issues, policy issues. And this is a matter of concern.
But when you look at artificial intelligence, it's a very esoteric concept. If you talk to the normal citizen on the street, till the ChatGPT hit them. And today you're seeing that more and more students, more and more professors, more and more research people, I think PhD is becoming a very easy issue to do now. All they need is get and ask who is Lord Ram, and it gives you a whole lot of options to say who is Lord Ram. But what I want to ask you is, how do we take this? Because you really say that we are a nation of coolies, we are a nation of IT coolies. But how did we take this IT coolies to the next level? Because we don't have a product, which we are proud to say, we don't have a kind of operating system, as you said. But when it comes to intelligence, we were intelligent at one time.
We are still intelligent.
What? How do we take that to the next level?
So, we are very intelligent people. We have some of the best AI engineers, but we have rented their brains. The problem, the reason we are coolies is not because we are bad people or we are inferior people, but we are not working for ourselves. We are working for somebody else, carrying their load on our head, doing their work for them. And this means that, you know, the problem is the people who made a lot of money in wage arbitrage, labor arbitrage.
Correct.
They rent somebody for $10,000 a year and they rent him out, they hire him for 10,000, they rent him out for 40,000, they make a lot of money, become billionaires, get Padma Vibhushan, go around the world looking like they are big heroes. But actually they've exploited because they've kept the wages low in order to make money by renting them at a high price, and they've created a middle class, they've done well, they brought a lot of FDI and a lot of money, but they did not reinvest this profit to create patents and technology of our own. They should have created our own platforms by now. They've been making so much money. China has taken their wage arbitrage. They also hired people low in China, rented them high to the American factory workers. They made a lot of money too, but they took a large chunk of that money, reinvested it in technologies of the future. We did not reinvest in technologies of the future. So China is number one in robotics, they're number one in solar, they are right at the top, neck to neck with US in quantum computing, they are at the top in AI, they're at the top in the futurist technologies. And we are not, but we have a labor pool which others are renting from us. So our problem is bad policy.
How do you change that policy then?
So government should require, sit down with the industrialists and say what would it take for you to take a certain portion of your AI engineers or your tech engineers and use them not to rent their brains and make profit, but use them to make technology that we will own. There are several ways to do this. One is that we should have started our own ChatGPT type projects here. We still could. The people with a lot of money, you know, the super billionaire type, have the money to put aside some money and do this. They could do it and they would be better off. Another way is when we give rent brains to a foreign entity, whether it's a Google or a Microsoft or whoever, we should say that we want a portion of equity from you. We want a portion of your equity. You know, it's like I'm giving you 20,000 Indians to work for you. Maybe some portion of that money which is owed to us as compensation, we would like to take it as equity. And then the technology they are developing, we'll have a share in it.
But you're seeing that, I mean, in Government of India with its Make in India policy, especially with regards to aircrafts, the missiles and others, and even to the matter of making phones now from China, you're seeing a lot of manufacturing moving, Apple phones moving to India. While we're doing well in hardware part of it, it's a software that is not catching up.
And the strange thing is we call ourselves a software power. And we do have the brains. We rented out our software people. We rented out their brains rather than using it for ourselves. This is a serious disconnect, and I go on arguing and go on criticizing this for the last 10 years. I think people will gradually listen.
But where do you think the Government of India with its policies, it's very proactive in many fields, as I said before now, when you can force Boeing to make their parts in Hyderabad right here where you're sitting, including the civilian and military aircraft, why is it that when it comes to making products, when it comes to making operating systems, is it because the Americans believe that they need to hold on to their IP and make money?
Oh, of course they do. Of course. But look what China did. China got its own equivalent of everything. They got their own equivalent of Amazon and Google and Facebook and Twitter. They got their own because they believe that, and they started 10, 15 years ago in developing these platforms made in China. We did not see the importance. We thought that if India has got the largest WhatsApp users, we are doing well. But we are the consumers of technology, not the producers. So even though Indian brains are working, but they are working as the Americans are the owners and producers. We are performing our role, working as employees for them.
But one field we really revolutionized is the payment mechanism. For example, in India, you go to a Pani Puri wala, to a vegetable vendor, to anybody today, everybody uses a QR code, UPI based payment system that the Government of India developed as a base. On that, many people build their platforms. Do you think when we can do that kind of work, and today we are tied up with many countries to take the technology abroad?
It's a good example of success. It's a good example which says we have the brains, and if we have the innovation and far-sightedness, we should develop these solutions and we should sell it to the world like the Chinese are doing it. This is where the $1 trillion market cap, when you look at why are some of these companies on Wall Street, their market cap is $2 trillion. I mean, people like Microsoft, people like Google, these sort of companies, Amazon, their market cap is almost as big as our GDP. I mean, that's how big they are. And this is a technology we should be doing.
And exactly, that's the point I'm trying to ask is our engineering colleges of today in India, there's a constant criticism that the industry has, is that the students who come out of these colleges are not really industry ready.
So, whether they are ready or not, the point is they are ready to be rented to other people. So, we do upgrade them and rent them out to some foreign client. So, we could also upgrade them and rent them out for our own development work. We could. I think what India needs, in my suggestion is, India needs an AI commission, like the Space Commission, like the Atomic Energy Commission. It should not be run by babus, it should not be in Delhi, it should be some faraway place. So, atomic energy is in Bombay and space is in Bangalore, maybe AI can be in Hyderabad, something like that. It needs to be in some other place, autonomous, but they should be given a budget, huge budget like the space people have and like the atomic energy. And this will pay dividends in the next few decades. As much as atomic energy and as much as space did, AI will do.
In fact, you looked at the Ukraine-Russia war. That changed the dynamics of war as such, but along with it, it changed a lot of geopolitical equations. It changed the technology, it changed the banking system, and of course, it changed the politics. Do you think there are lessons to be learned from the way that war is still holding on and the changes that it brought about in big parts of the world?
So, that's a technology war. I mean, whether it's the hypersonics of the Russians, whether it's the use of Elon Musk's satellites for communications, it's a very high-tech war. And so, I think that in the future, there will be robotic wars. There will be wars. China is developing a robotic army. They are developing a drone army, where these drones, you don't need fighters, human and all that. They are disposable and they'll aggressively go, and if they're shot down, they're shot down. What happens if a few lakh robotic soldiers start climbing the Himalayas? What are we going to do? How many are we going to kill? How many are we going to catch hold of? So, that's the future kind of warfare we have to think about. What happens if China gets into quantum computing ahead of anybody else, which is possible, and then with quantum computing instantly they can break all codes and they can break all your missiles, all the networks, not only defense networks, but also energy networks, electric grids. They can create havoc and bring you down immediately, and they may well want to do that. They may well be just sort of building up to expecting that they'll have a breakthrough in quantum computing, because with quantum computing you have like 1,000 times more power than any conventional computer. So, this will allow you to break all the security, all the encryption, all the passwords, and give you a head up, give you an advantage in electronic warfare.
In fact, we saw that when Israel did that with Iran in terms of breaking into their nuclear sites, changing their programs, rewriting, shutting down the plants as such. But when you look at the road ahead, I mean, you talk of it's difficult to say 10 years what will happen because world changes overnight now. But let us say 5 years from now, where do you think the world of technology, because we see Google collapsing, we're seeing big companies collapsing now because a small thing like an artificial intelligence has changed the business model. We're seeing Facebook getting into trouble. We're seeing a lot of other things changing. Where do you think the world of technology will be, say, 5 years from now?
I have a feeling that the Chinese will have a slight edge over the Americans, not a huge edge, but a slight edge. Then the Americans will come back, because Americans feel that Chinese have caught up so much, and much of it they've stolen technology and used it to get ahead. But the US is betting on technology which is like 2030 onwards. There is a window of 2025 to 2030 when the US is vulnerable to China. I believe that. And President Xi thinks he's got a window and he's going to do something crazy, like Putin did. He might do that. But if the US can hang on to that, then I think by 2030 the US will have other technologies which are way ahead of the current wave of technologies. So, let's see what happens. But India is in trouble in the sense that the competition for the top is between US and China, and they'll trade off here and there. Maybe they'll have a truce that you conquer half the world and we conquer half the world, like Britain and France. Britain and France were rivals, until they decided that you know, there is this whole world. You take this part and we'll take that part and we'll be okay with each other. United States and China might say, you know, you take Africa, we'll take Asia, or you take this part of Asia, we'll take that part of Asia. Where is India then? We cannot be happy that Americans will protect us. We got to be able to protect ourselves. Anybody who protects us will extract a price. They will have an agenda. They will calculate, what do I get out of it? So, if we are a Vishwa Guru, forget Vishwa Guru, if we want to remain sovereign, we must learn to stand on our own feet technologically. India's per capita investment in R&D is one of the lowest in the world. Percent of GDP is one of the lowest in the world. Per capita, of course, but even as a percentage of GDP, it's very low.
In fact, I wish I could go on and all with your crystal gazing, I'm sure. But even to add that our PhDs are not really where they need to be, because our PhDs are only bookish PhDs.
Yes.
Very less in number than China. China has a huge number of PhDs, which they're converting from the lab to the market.
Yes.
But we haven't done that yet.
No. And I think that a lot of the Indian brains are going to get into tech and get a high price. When they go to the United States, they get high salary jobs and all that. While in the universities and the top think tanks is the Chinese who go for a PhD and get an academic and research job. So they are brilliant people. They are the thinkers of the futures. They are the intellectuals.
And that's what exactly I think Infinity Foundation can show a way there, because you must have learned that in US, the think tanks work big time.
Yes.
They influence a lot of policy changes.
Yes.
And I think the way forward is there. I wish I could have one more hour of yours, but I know you're hard pressed for time here in Hyderabad. But Mr. Rajiv Malhotra, thanks a lot for speaking to us here today at Nationalist Hub. It was wonderful speaking to you. And I'm sure our viewers in Nationalist Hub also would have understood the gist of what he said. And as I said, you read his books, you'll understand a lot more. You hear his talks, you'll understand a lot more. And over the next 2 days here in Hyderabad, Mr. Malhotra will be going around a lot of other places here to understand and speak to students, speak to policymakers, speak to businessmen, speak to media, and tell them what is all happening around us. Thank you for watching.
Please subscribe to Nationalist Hub English channel for more interesting videos, and don't forget to like and share this video. Nationalist Hub, it's a news revolution.